Her family called her the cursed woman because her baby was stillborn. They kicked her out, left her alone. But fate had a strange twist. She was the only one who could give life to an Inca warrior's baby. Welcome to Old Life Stories, quotes from times when respect and love were scarce. What are your thoughts on these times? Don't forget to leave a comment. If you enjoy the story, like and subscribe for more. It's story time. In the cold Andes Mountains of Peru, about 50 kilometers outside the city of Cusco, in a small valley surrounded by cliffs, lived a 26-year-old woman named Lucia Waman. The marriage between her Quechua father and Spanish mother had never been accepted by the rest of the family. Lucia was mestiza, stuck between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Her brown hair was always tied in a tight bun, and her dark green eyes were silent witnesses to the pain she had carried for years. It was the autumn of 1892, and Lucia's arms were empty, but her body was still ready for motherhood. Her breasts filled with painful fullness every morning. 3 months ago, on an autumn day when the leaves were falling, the baby she had carried in her womb for 9 months was stillborn. When the midwife took him, the baby wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. That tiny heart wasn't beating. They took away her child before Lucia could even see its face, as if not seeing would somehow lessen the pain. "It's God's punishment," her mother-in-law Dolores had said in a cold voice. "Mestiza blood is cursed. Impure blood cannot produce healthy children." Lucia's husband, Mateo, could only last 2 weeks after the baby's death. He couldn't look at his wife anymore. Every time he did, he saw their lost child, and it was unbearable. By the end of the 3rd week, he left the house saying, "I'm going to the city for work." But everyone knew he wasn't coming back. Mateo's family blamed Lucia. To them, the mixing of her lineage was cursed, and that curse had killed the baby. "She cannot stay in this house," her mother-in-law had declared at dinner one evening. "Her presence brings bad luck to this family." Lucia's own family had also turned their backs on her. Her Quechua father, Antonio, had already been ostracized by his own people for marrying his Spanish wife, Isabella. Now, his daughter's stillbirth was seen as a sign that his choice had been cursed. "We cannot live under the same roof as you," her father had said, his eyes fixed on the ground. "The village elders say your presence will ruin all the crops. You must live somewhere else." So Lucia found herself completely alone. Her mother-in-law gave her a small, dilapidated hut at the farthest point of the valley, where cold winds blew mercilessly. The hut had stone walls and a partially collapsed roof, but at least it was shelter. Lucia began to live there alone. She spent her days collecting herbs, growing small amounts of vegetables, and sometimes washing laundry for neighboring villages. People stayed away from her in fear, as if her bad luck were contagious. But the most painful thing wasn't the physical loneliness, but the motherhood her body constantly reminded her of. Every morning, her breasts would fill and harden with milk, causing pain. She had no baby, but her body didn't know that. Still continuing to produce milk to care for an infant, Lucia had to express the milk, otherwise the pain was unbearable. But each time, watching the milk spilled in vain, the emptiness inside her deepened. On a cold November night, snow had begun to fall. Lucia was in her small hut wrapped in a wool blanket, trying to add wood to the dying fire. The wind howled through the holes in the hut's roof, and the cold was almost cut into her bones. It was past midnight when she heard a violent knocking at the door. Lucia froze. Who could have come at this hour, in these weather conditions? With a mixture of fear and curiosity, she approached the door. "Please." A voice came from outside, a male voice choked with desperation. "Open! My baby is dying." When Lucia opened the door, the sight she saw shocked her. In the snow, a man was kneeling. His clothes were traditional Inca style, woven wool, decorated with intricate patterns. His face was cracked from the wind, his lips were blue, but most striking was the tiny baby bundle in his arms. The baby was crying, a weak, painful cry. The man looked at Lucia, and there was such desperation in his eyes that the woman forgot all her fears. "Come inside," she said quickly, pulling the man in. "Now, you'll freeze." The man stumbled inside, and Lucia closed the door and drew the bolt. She added more wood to the fire, making the flames come alive. The man knelt by the fire and began to carefully unwrap the baby. The baby was perhaps 3 months old, maybe younger. His lips were blue, his skin had turned white from the cold, his crying was getting weaker, which was an even worse sign. The baby was dying. "How long have you been on the road?" Lucia asked, kneeling down. 2 days, the man said, shivering. My wife died in childbirth. I couldn't find milk for the baby. I tried goat milk, but he won't drink it. He vomits, gets weaker. I was told that there was a woman around here who had lost her baby but still had milk." Lucia's heart stopped. Was he looking for her? The woman kicked out of her town, called cursed? I am that woman, she said slowly. "But how?" "A curandera," the man said. "A healer woman told me. She said, 'Find Lucia. Only she can save your son.' The prophecy spoke of her." "Prophecy?" Lucia's voice trembled. The man nodded briefly, but he wasn't in a state to explain now. The baby was hardly crying anymore. His eyes were closing, the sleep of death. Lucia acted instinctively. She took the baby from the man's arms. The small body was cold, almost lifeless. "What's your name?" she asked quickly. "Tupac," the man said. "I'm Tupac Amaru. My son's name is Atok. It means fox." Lucia wrapped the blanket around herself, bringing the baby close to her chest. He needed warmth first. The baby was too cold. She pressed Atok against her body heat, trying to warm his tiny body with her own fire. Then, without thinking, by instinct, she unbuttoned her blouse and pressed the baby to her breast. Atok didn't react at first. But then, as his body warmed, the reflex returned. The small mouth began to search. Lucia guided the baby to her nipple and Atok began to suckle. At first weak, but then stronger, more determined. As warm milk began to flow into the small body, Lucia felt the baby come alive. For 3 months, milk that had flowed in vain, expressed with pain, had finally found its purpose. Lucia couldn't hold back the tears in her eyes. This baby wasn't hers, but this moment made her a mother. Tupac sat by the fire, watching this miracle. There was an expression of incredible relief on his face. His son would live. When Atok was satisfied, Lucia carefully moved him to her other breast. The baby had slowly begun to turn pink. His breathing had regularized. Lucia looked at his little face, delicate eyebrows, small nose, perfect lips. She had never seen the baby she lost. Perhaps he was this beautiful too. "Thank you," Tupac said quietly. "You saved my son's life." Lucia looked up at the man. Now in the firelight, she could look at him more closely. He must have been in his 30s, dark bronze skin, sharp jawline, black hair falling down his back in a thick braid. His eyes were dark brown and there was nobility in their depths. "Who are you?" Lucia asked. "You're not just a farmer, are you?" Tupac took a deep breath. "No, I am Tupac Amaru, descended from the last Inca king. The Spanish killed my ancestors, destroyed our empire. But some of us remained, hiding in the mountains, preserving our traditions, hiding our treasures." "Treasures?" "Yes. The Spanish stole our gold, destroyed our temples. But we hid our most valuable things, our knowledge, our sacred objects, our prophecies. And I I was a prophecy. Tupac nodded. The curandera, the healer woman, saw it years ago. She said, "One day a mestiza woman trapped between two worlds will be called cursed. But that curse will actually be a gift. She will save a lost prince and be the bridge between two peoples." Lucia was trying to process this. You really believe this?" "I have to believe," Tupac said seriously, "because my son is alive. And I cannot believe this is a coincidence." That night, Lucia, Tupac, and little Atok stayed together in the hut. The snowstorm intensified. Going outside was impossible. Lucia nursed Atok every few hours. Each time she felt the baby getting a little stronger. Tupac told her his story. His wife Koya had died from excessive bleeding during childbirth. There wasn't adequate medical help in the mountain village where Tupac's tribe lived. They had saved the baby but lost Koya. "You loved her very much," Lucia said quietly. "Yes," Tupac confirmed. "But now I live for my son. He is the continuation of our lineage. He is our future." Toward morning, the storm subsided. When the first light filtered into the hut, Lucia looked outside the window. Everything was covered in snow. The world looked white and calm. "I must go," Tupac said sadly. "I must return to my tribe." But Atok still needs me," Lucia completed. "Doesn't he?" Tupac nodded. "For a few months, yes, until he can transition to goat milk. If you would come with us." Lucia's heart raced. "With you? To the mountains?" "I know, I'm asking a lot. But I've seen how they treat you here. They call you cursed. With us, you would be a hero, the woman who saved a prince." Lucia looked inside her hut, cold, deserted, lonely. Then she looked at Atok, the small baby sleeping in her arms. Then at Tupac, this stranger, but kind man. "What do I have to lose?" she murmured. Then louder, "Yes, I'll come with you." Tupac's face lit up with hope. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I have nothing here. But there is Atok, and that's enough for me." 2 days later, Lucia had packed her entire world into a small bundle, following behind Tupac, the baby tied to her chest, heading toward the mountains. The journey was difficult. The paths were narrow. The cold was sharp. But with each step, she was moving away from her old life, progressing toward a new future. At the end of the 3rd day, they arrived at a small village hidden on the mountainside. Traditional stone houses, terraced fields, and in the center of it all, an ancient Inca temple partially hidden underground. When the villagers saw Tupac, they ran. "He's returned with his baby. He's alive." An old woman, her face covered in deep wrinkles, stepped forward. She looked at Lucia, then at Atok, then back at Lucia. "You," she said in Quechua, "you are the woman of the prophecy." Lucia bowed her head. "I don't know what I am, but I saved this baby. I know that." The old woman, the curandera, the healer, smiled. "Then you know everything you need to know. Welcome, bridge woman, welcome." From that day on, Lucia began living in the Inca village. She continued to nurse Atok for months. The baby grew strong, grew big, learned to laugh. And Lucia changed too. She was no longer cursed, no longer outcast. Now she was mother. Now she was savior. Tupac taught her Inca culture, the Quechua language, traditional healing, the language of the stars. Lucia learned quickly. Her mixed heritage, both Quechua and Spanish, she began to see not as a curse, but as strength. She could be a bridge between two worlds. As months passed, something changed between Lucia and Tupac. At first they had come together only for Atok. But now when they looked at each other, they saw something different: respect, admiration, and perhaps love. One evening, after Atok had fallen asleep, Tupac took Lucia to the temple. Inside was lit with torches. On the walls were golden plates, pictures of Inca gods. "I want to show you something," Tupac said. He opened a secret panel in the wall. Behind it was a small room filled with gold, silver, and precious stones. This is a treasure," Lucia whispered. "Yes, one of the treasures we hid from the Spanish. We've protected it for generations, and now," Tupac pulled out a silver necklace with a sun symbol on it. "This belongs to you. It belongs to the woman of the prophecy." I don't deserve this," Lucia said, shaking her head. "You do deserve it. You gave life to my son. You gave me hope. You gave this village a future." Tupac placed the necklace around her neck. "And if you'll accept, give me a wife too." Lucia's eyes filled with tears. I'm a mestiza, between two worlds." "Exactly," Tupac said, moving closer to her. "That's why you're perfect. Atak needs a mother, I need a wife, and you need a family. Why shouldn't we be together?" Lucia bit her lip. "But what about Koya? Your wife?" "I will always love Koya. But she's gone now. You're here. And my heart is open to you." That night, under the stars, before the eyes of the ancient gods, Lucia and Tupac came together, not just physically, spiritually too. Two lost souls found a home in each other. 5 years later, Lucia and Tupac had 3 children. Atak was now 5 years old with 2 younger siblings. Lucia had become completely part of the Inca community. She worked as a healer, combining both Quechua and Spanish medicine. When a peace negotiation was held between the Spanish colony and the Inca village, Lucia served as translator and mediator. She could understand both sides because she came from both. One evening, as the sun set behind the Andes Mountains, Lucia looked at her family. Tupac was laughing while playing with the children. Atak was teaching his siblings something, and in Lucia's arms, the youngest was dozing. "Did you ever regret it?" Tupac asked when he came beside her. Lucia smiled. "No. That night, when I found you at my door, that night my life began. Before that, I was just existing, but from that moment on, I started living." "The prophecy," Tupac said calmly, "is always right. You weren't cursed. You were blessed. You were just waiting for the right moment." Lucia leaned her head on Tupac's shoulder and looked at the mountains. The village that once rejected her was far away. But she didn't care anymore, because here, in these mountains, with these people, with this family, she had finally found her home. And it all started with a stranger who came begging for milk for a baby. Sometimes fate works in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes the greatest blessing first appears as a curse.